She called 911 screaming I was blocking public lake access after I kicked her son and his buddies off my private dock. What she didn't know, the dock, the water, the quiet cove in front of my cabin, it all belonged to me. All of it, and I had the paperwork and the security camera footage to prove it. It started on a Saturday morning, the kind where you're just trying to breathe again, you know. The kind of morning where the fog is still lifting off the lake, sunlight bouncing like a quiet promise, and you can almost hear your brother's voice in the breeze as you stand by the dock he built before he passed. I had coffee in my hand, boots damp from the dew, and a calm I hadn't felt in months. Then I heard it, a truck door slamming, laughter, shouts, the splashing of something heavy hitting the water. At first I thought, maybe it's just some kids fishing. Then I saw the red hats, the loud Bluetooth speaker, the beer cans rolling across my dock, and Karen's son, the one with the attitude, flicking ashes into the lake like he owned the place. They didn't even see me at first. They were too busy jumping off my dock, yelling at each other, tossing around a football like it was their personal playground. I walked down the slope, gravel crunching under my boots. They turned, beer cans in hand, smirking. "Hey man, you got a lighter?" That's what he said to me, on my dock, on my water. I kept my voice calm, but my hands were shaking just a little. "This is private property," I said. "You need to leave now." Karen's son rolled his eyes. "Dude, chill out. It's a public lake." "No, it's not." "Oh yeah, that's not what my mom says." That's when it clicked. Karen, the HOA queen herself. Of course, they refused to leave. They laughed, called me old man, and kept partying. So I walked back up to my cabin, unlocked the door, and grabbed the small sign I keep for moments like these. "Private property, no trespassing." I nailed it to the post at the top of the dock. Karen's son saw me and laughed again. "Oh, is that supposed to scare me, bro?" I didn't answer. I just pointed at the sign, then at them, then at the camera on the corner of my cabin, blinking red. It took them another 15 minutes, but eventually they stumbled off the dock, still yelling, flipping me off as they trudged back to their truck. I thought that was the end of it. It wasn't. Later that afternoon, I saw Karen. She was standing at the edge of the woods, hidden behind a pine tree, phone in hand, recording. She thought she was slick. I watched her from my porch as she watched me, her eyes narrowed, lips pursed, every bit the HOA queen in her yoga pants and oversized sunglasses, and then she was gone. I thought maybe she finally understood. Maybe she told her son to stay away. I was wrong. The next morning I woke up to flashing lights outside my window, sheriff's deputies. Karen was there too, arms flailing, voice shrill. "He's blocking public lake access. He threatened my son. He's got a gun." Lie after lie, spilling from her lips like poison. I stepped outside, hands up, heart pounding, but not afraid, because I knew I had the footage, the paperwork. The survey map my grandfather kept rolled up in the cabin's closet, showing the lakefront lines. The lines that proved it was ours, going back 80 years. The deputies' eyes were calm. They'd been here before. They knew Karen. They'd seen her type. She kept screaming, demanding they arrest me, calling me a squatter on community property, insisting the lake was public, and the dock was for everyone. I could see her son in the truck, hiding his face, the same smirk gone, replaced with fear. I told the deputy I'd like to show him something. I walked back inside, unrolled the survey map, handed it over. Then I pulled up the security footage on my phone, the footage of her son and his buddies trespassing, throwing beer cans, yelling, ignoring me when I told them to leave. The deputy nodded. Karen's voice got quieter and quieter until she wasn't saying anything at all. Then came the best part. The deputy turned to Karen and said, "Ma'am, this is private property. You and your son are trespassing." She froze, mouth open, sunglasses slipping down her nose, reality hitting her like a wave across the dock. She tried to argue, but the deputy raised a hand. "Ma'am, any further complaints will be considered harassment. If you step on his property again, you will be charged." I wish you could have seen her face. That moment, the silence, the humiliation, the way the world flipped upside down for her in an instant. She left, practically dragging her son by the arm. But she wasn't done yet. Later that week, I got a letter in the mail, an official looking envelope from the HOA, a fine for blocking public access, a demand for $500, and a note that said, Consider this your last warning." I laughed because what Karen didn't know was that I had already called my lawyer. I already had a copy of the recorded footage, the map, and the incident report from the sheriff. I was ready. And when the HOA tried to push back, when Karen tried to bluff her way into taking my dock, my water, my family's legacy, she had no idea she was about to lose everything. If you think Karen learned her lesson yet, you're wrong. This was just the beginning. Wait until you see what happens when she tries to buy me out and discovers the truth about who really owns this lake. Karen thought a $500 fine would scare me. She thought an official letter with HOA letterhead and cheap lawyer talk would make me bend. She didn't know me, and she didn't know my family. The next day, I sat on the dock with my coffee, just like before. The lake was calm, the morning birds loud, the water gently brushing against the wood. I closed my eyes, remembering the sound of my brother's laughter, the way he used to whistle while cleaning fish, the way this dock was our safe place. That was why I wasn't going to let Karen take it. Not now, not ever. Later that afternoon, a black SUV pulled up. Karen stepped out in a bright red jacket, sunglasses on, clipboard in hand. She strutted down the slope like she owned the place. Behind her, her son and 2 HOA board members trailed like ducklings. She didn't even knock. She walked up to the dock, her shoes crunching on the gravel. "You're trespassing on community property," she announced, loud enough for the entire lake to hear. I didn't even stand. I just looked at her, took a sip of coffee and said, "No, you are." She sputtered, flipping through her clipboard. "I have paperwork," she said. "So do I." I stood up slowly, walked into the cabin, and came back with the rolled survey map, laid it out on the picnic table, pointed to the bold black line that clearly marked the property lines, lines drawn long before her HOA even existed. The lines that said the dock, the shore, the trees, the slope. All of it was mine. She tried to argue. She tried to wave her clipboard around, claiming bylaws, community rights, some nonsense about historical use. That's when I smiled, because while she was ranting, I turned on my phone. Recording, capturing every word, every threat, every lie. She realized it too late. Her eyes widened. "You can't record me." "Actually, I can." That's when her son stepped forward, puffing out his chest. "You think you can just block people from the lake?" he snapped. I looked him in the eyes. "This is private property. You're trespassing." He lunged forward like he was going to shove me. That's when one of the board members, an older man with a gray beard, put a hand on the kid's shoulder and pulled him back. "Let's go, Karen." But Karen wasn't ready to leave. She turned, glaring at him. "We are not leaving. He's a menace. He's harassing the entire neighborhood." I stayed quiet. Just let her keep talking, recording every word. Finally, they left, storming up the slope, the kid kicking gravel, Karen muttering threats under her breath. An hour later, I got the first text. $75,000 for your property, final offer. It was from Karen. I laughed. $75,000 for a lakefront cabin that's been in my family for 3 generations. I didn't even bother replying. Then came the threats. The next day, a notice on my door. Daily fines of $250 for blocking public access. I peeled it off, crumpled it, tossed it in the trash. That evening, I sat on the dock again, fishing rod in hand, the sunset painting the lake gold, thinking, remembering, and deciding. I walked back into the cabin, unlocked the old filing cabinet, and pulled out the envelope my brother left me before he died. Inside was a letter, handwritten, telling me to protect the cabin, telling me to protect the dock, telling me not to let them take it, no matter what. There was something else in the envelope, an old survey map with additional handwritten notes from my grandfather. I read it, then I read it again, then I smiled, because there, in faded pencil, was a note about an old property line that extended 30 feet beyond the current dock. A line that meant I didn't just own the dock. I owned the water around it, all of it. The next morning, I went to the county office, filed the paperwork, confirmed the survey, made copies, had them notarized. I came back to the cabin, posted a new sign on the dock, private property, no trespassing, entire cove under private ownership. That's when the real fun began. Karen came back with the sheriff. She was screaming, red-faced, jabbing her finger at the sign. "He can't do this. This is illegal. The sheriff calmly turned to her. "Ma'am, I've seen the paperwork. He can." Karen froze just like that. Then she turned to me, eyes blazing. "You think you're so smart." I didn't say anything. I didn't have to, because the moment she stepped 1 foot onto that dock again, it would be trespassing, and I would have every right to press charges. She left, but she wasn't done, not by a long shot. That night, I woke up to the sound of footsteps outside. I peeked through the curtain. Karen's son and his buddies in hoodies creeping down to the dock. Flashlights in hand, they started tearing down the sign, kicking over flower pots, ripping the memorial plaque for my brother off the post. They didn't know about the cameras. They didn't see the red light blinking in the dark. They didn't know I was watching, recording every second. I called the sheriff. He was there in 10 minutes. Karen's son tried to run, didn't get far. They were arrested on the spot, caught vandalizing private property. Trespassing? Destruction of a memorial. Karen showed up, screaming, begging, threatening lawsuits, threatening me. But the sheriff just turned to her and said, "Ma'am, you need to leave before you're arrested too." She froze again, eyes wide, lip trembling. I watched as she realized her entire plan had backfired. Her lies, her threats, her power, all crumbling in the glow of the patrol car lights. And I stood there on the porch, silent, the memory of my brother strong in the night air, knowing he would have smiled if he saw it. Pause, but Karen still wasn't done, and neither was I, because what she tried next would expose something even darker. Something hidden under the surface of the lake for years, and when the truth came out, the HOA would never be the same. After that night, the lake felt different, quiet, but with tension under the calm. The water rippled under a sunrise sky, pink and gold, but I felt the weight of what was coming, because Karen wasn't done, and neither was I. 3 days later, I received a thick envelope in the mail. Certified, stamped with the HOA letterhead in bold red. Inside, 30 pages of threats, legal jargon, fines stacking up to thousands of dollars, accusations that I was violating community harmony, impeding public access, harboring aggression. I laughed when I read it, because I knew it was empty noise, but I also knew Karen was testing me, pushing to see if I'd break. What she didn't know, my brother had trained me well, and I had one more card to play. I called my lawyer, a quiet man named Harris with a sharp mind and a sharper tongue. I handed him the survey, the footage, the HOA threats. He reviewed everything with a small nod, flipping pages, eyes darting back and forth. Finally, he closed the folder. "They're bluffing," he said, "and we're not." The next day, Harris sent them a cease and desist letter, demanded they retract the fines, demanded they cease trespassing on my land, demanded they formally acknowledge the boundary lines. Karen responded by showing up at my dock again. This time, she had a camera crew, her son holding a phone on a selfie stick, live streaming. "Say hello to the neighborhood, thief," she shouted. She was trying to spin the narrative, trying to frame me as the villain. I didn't take the bait. I calmly placed another "no trespassing" sign on the dock post, turned to her camera and said, "You're trespassing, leave now." She ranted, pacing back and forth, waving paperwork in the air, accusing me of destroying community access, calling me selfish. The chat on her live stream was exploding. Neighbors were watching, some agreeing, some calling her out. Then she made her mistake. She stepped onto the dock. Her son followed, still filming. I held up my phone, recording her. "Ma'am, you are trespassing, leave now." She laughed, a cold, shrill sound. "You're going to call the cops on me, go ahead." So I did. I dialed calmly, letting the phone ring as she kept ranting into her live stream. The sheriff arrived within minutes, same deputy as before. He stepped out, glanced at Karen, then at me again. He asked, tired but amused. I nodded, showed him the footage, showed him the paperwork, showed him the survey. Karen's smile faded as the deputy turned to her. "Ma'am, you need to leave now," she screamed, about rights, about her lake, about injustice, about how the HOA would crush me. The deputy just stood there, arms crossed, waiting. She stomped off, her son following, the camera still rolling. As they left, I heard her muttering, "This isn't over." And she was right, because what happened next would change everything. That night, while I was reviewing the footage from the dock cameras, something caught my eye. A shadow under the dock, A dark shape moving just beneath the water. At first I thought it was just a fish, but it moved too deliberately, too slowly. I paused the video, zoomed in, and I saw it. A glint of something metallic. I grabbed a flashlight and went down to the dock. The lake was calm, reflecting the moonlight. The boards creaked softly under my boots. I shone the light into the water, and there it was, a small metal box wedged between the rocks, half buried in mud. My heart pounded as I pulled it out, water dripping, mud sliding off the sides. It was heavy, old, with a rusted lock. I carried it inside, set it on the table, and carefully pried it open. Inside, stacks of papers, old deeds, maps, letters, receipts, documents showing transactions between the original developers of the lake and the first homeowners. Documents showing easements that had expired. Proof that the HOA had no legal claim over parts of the lake. At the bottom, wrapped in oilcloth, was a single sheet of paper, a hand-drawn map, showing the original property lines. Lines that matched the survey I had. Lines that proved the entire cove was privately owned. My hands shook as I realized what I was holding. Proof, undeniable, irrefutable proof. I stayed up all night, scanning the documents, organizing them, sending copies to Harris. We both knew what this meant. Karen wasn't just trespassing. She was running an HOA based on a lie, and I was about to expose it. The next morning, I stood on the dock, holding the box. The lake was quiet. The birds were singing. The world felt still. I took a deep breath, because I knew everything was about to change. I didn't sleep much that night. My mind was racing, every page of that old box replaying in my head. In the quiet hours, I made a decision. It was time to end this. When dawn broke, I brewed a strong coffee and called Harris. "I'm done playing defense," I told him. He just chuckled. "About time." We filed an injunction that morning against the HOA, against Karen personally, against their attempts to fine me, harass me, and trespass on my property. The sheriff served the papers later that day. Karen's face, I heard, went pale as the official stamp hit her hand. But Karen, she was like a cornered snake, and cornered snakes bite. That evening, as the sun dipped over the lake, I was on my dock, phone buzzing with messages of support from neighbors who had seen her live streams. Some even thanked me. Turns out Karen had been harassing a lot of people for a long time. They were just too afraid to fight back, but not anymore. Suddenly, headlights flashed across the trees. A car pulled up fast, brakes screeching. Karen's son jumped out, camera in hand, already live streaming. Karen stepped out behind him, wearing that tight, angry smirk. She strutted down the dock. "You think you can beat me?" she hissed. I stayed calm, silent. She ranted about her power, her connections, how the HOA would bankrupt me in court, how she would ruin my name in the community. I pulled out the old map, held it up so her son's camera could see. "Everyone watching, listen closely," I said, locking eyes with the camera. "This map, these documents, prove this dock, this cove, this entire stretch of lake belongs to me." I unrolled the survey next. Held it up to the camera, pointed to the lines, showed the signatures. Karen's eyes darted between me, the papers, and her son's camera. Her confidence cracked. "You're lying," she snapped. I didn't say a word. I turned, walked to the old wooden post at the edge of the dock, and nailed a fresh sign to it. "Private property. Trespassers will be prosecuted." Karen lunged forward, ripping the sign off. Her son gasped. She turned, eyes wild, waving the sign in the air. "You can't do this." At that exact moment, blue lights flashed behind them. The sheriff pulled up, calmly stepping out. He nodded to me, then turned to Karen. "Ma'am, you're under arrest for destruction of property and trespassing." Karen's mouth opened, but no words came out. She tried to speak, but her voice cracked, a squeak escaping. Her son lowered the camera, stunned. "Mom," the sheriff gently took her arm. "Read her rights." As the handcuffs clicked, the reality finally hit her. I watched silently as Karen, the self-appointed queen of the HOA, the terror of neighbors, the tyrant of the lake, was led away in handcuffs. Her son, trembling, tried to speak. I didn't know. I looked at him, my voice calm but firm. "You have a choice. Don't follow her path." He nodded, tears in his eyes, and turned off the camera. The lake was quiet again. The sun reflected off the ripples, painting gold across the water. Neighbors came out of their cabins, gathering by the dock. Some clapped me on the back, some simply nodded in respect. I wasn't just fighting for myself. I realized I had fought for all of them too. Karen's trial was quick. The evidence from my cameras, the survey maps, the historic documents, everything lined up perfectly. She was found guilty of trespassing, harassment, destruction of property, and misuse of HOA funds. The court dissolved the HOA authority over my property. Fines were reversed, her power gone. As for me, I kept my brother's dock. His memorial garden was restored, fresh flowers planted under the old oak. The lake remained peaceful, mine to protect. And the community learned something important, that standing up to bullies, no matter how loud they are, can change everything. One quiet morning, I sat at the end of the dock, coffee in hand, watching the mist rise off the water. I could almost hear my brothers laugh in the breeze. Rest easy. I whispered, we're good now. Karen tried to steal from the wrong family. She called the cops on the wrong man, and she lost everything when the truth came out. If you ever face a bully, remember, sometimes all it takes is standing your ground and telling your story.